We're here with Sam Gordon, our resident property expert, the founder of Australian Property Scout, host of Scouting Australia podcast, and the Top 1%. Sam, welcome back.
Bryce, thanks for having me, mate. Great to be back.
Now, if you've just joined us for the first time, Australian Property Scout is Australia's leading investment buyers agent, and Sam works with plenty of the Equity Mates community. So if you're interested in working with Sam, we'll put a link into the show notes for you to get in touch. Now, when we got you on the show 18 months ago or thereabouts, we introduced you through the concept of rentvesting, because that's very much how you started your journey. And I think to this point, you still don't own a principal place of residence. Is that correct?
That's changed.
Can I say that?
So 10 days ago, I started on my
no
private
way.
residence.
Congratulations.
So thanks, man. Thanks.
Well, I mean, okay, for the last however many years, you've been practicing what you preach.
For sure.
Which is just investing through property.
But I think it's a good bookend, right? And I think we'll get into the rent investing in 1 second. But I think the cool thing is, like, for the first 8 years as an investor, so from I bought my first property at 19. From 19 to 27, I owned my own home. So 8 years in there. Then it was around about 7 or 8, I think, depending on months and crossovers and everything, somewhere between 7 and 8. And then again, around 7 or 8 years from there, I then rented where I wanted to live, and save that considerable amount between not only the deposit and the equity that's tied up in your own home, but the actual cost difference between rent versus mortgage and all the other costs associated with owning your own home as well. And so I leveraged the benefit of that to then build a substantial property portfolio, or build on my portfolio in a substantial way. And really, it's just a bookend to 7, 8 years of going down that avenue of what most would call sort of a sacrifice piece of not owning my own home, to then being able to eventually buy the dream home. And this is the thing, I haven't just bought like a nice home. I've bought a very, very nice home, which was the point of the rent vesting for all those years, investing for all those years, and then also doing a sell down of quite a large amount of my portfolio to then be able to actually fund myself into a dream primary residence.
And I think that's something that I think it's worth a lot of people considering right now. It's like the median house price in Australia now, I think, has just ticked over $1 million. And there's so much pressure on people to come out of university, save to buy their first principal place of residence. Sure. But there's definitely other ways that you can get into the property market. And your example there is one where you can get your dream home at some point in the future. So rent vesting is really the concept of renting where you want to live and then investing in property and servicing a loan, perhaps not at the crazy prices that you would need if you want your principal place, but investing in property to use that as a way of getting onto the ladder.
For sure.
So what do you think is the minimum realistic budget to start rent vesting in 2025? One
quick thing I'd probably throw in, just to tail end in on that note there as well, is a lot of people think there's security around owning your own home, and I don't agree with it. And it's because it's in a liquid asset, and so the government actually the banks don't look at it as an asset; they look at it as a liability.
Yeah,
it's a very expensive cost that's associated to you that you can't exit quickly, right? Yeah. So they don't look at it as an asset in your portfolio or an asset in general. And one of the other big things to note is that my honest belief is, actually, there's 2 points here. If you can't afford your dream home, then I don't think you should buy a home.
Yeah.
I don't think you should buy your own home. I think you should invest until you can afford to do it, until you can afford to buy your dream home, because the cost of bunny hopping each phase through buying a primary residence is very expensive. Stamp duty on the way into each deal, sales costs on the way out of each property, and just that transactional cost, especially an emotional purchase like that, it's very hard to get yourself well in front. And typically you get pre-approved for $1 million, $2 million. You go and spend that whole amount. You don't leave anything over to invest.
Yeah.
Rent vesting only works if you actually invest. So you can't, so a lot of people get hung up, they procrastinate, they don't buy. That is when you will kick yourself for not buying your own home.
You mean just renting?
Yeah, just exactly. It's just renting, right? It's just renting. So if you're going to do it, you got to do it. And so, like, if you're not going to go down an actual rent vesting path, I agree that rent money is dead money. You should go buy your primary residence. But if you're willing to commit to it and actually build yourself a strategy, build a portfolio, create something significant, you're going to be in a much better position financially from rent vesting and going down that avenue versus buying your primary residence.
Yeah. So let's say someone is at that point. They're like, I can service a loan, but I'm not going to get my dream home. What do you reckon is the a realistic budget?
Budget in terms of minimum, like, cash amount?
Well, more like, am I still looking to need to take out a mortgage of $1 million?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Never has been.
Okay.
It never has been, especially to invest. I mean, yes, it's a little bit dearer now than it was even, say, 12, 24, 36 months ago, where you could consistently buy properties to be to be realistic and probably to blow a lot of people's minds, in the 200,000, 300,000s.
That does blow my mind, yes.
Yeah. And a lot of those properties now, again, we're talking off air around locations and timing markets correctly. A lot of those locations now, 250 grand properties now worth 500, 600K.
Yeah.
But there are still markets you can buy in the threes. There's still markets you buy in the fours. There's a lot of markets between, say, the $500,000 to $700,000 price point. So if you're borrowing between an 80 to 90% loan against that property as well, you're putting in 10 to 20% deposit. You might be taking out a $450,000, $500,000, $600,000 loan, something like that. But the cool thing is, at that price point, your rents are typically more reflective of your purchase price too. So instead of $1 million property renting for $600,000, $700,000, you might be buying a $600,000 property that might be renting for $500, $600 a week. So the shortfall is typically a lot less on these cheaper end properties, but your growth rates can be significantly higher as well.
So really, then, from a deposit point of view, you're not needing anything near what you would if you were looking for a principal-based residence.
No, definitely not. Yeah. Definitely not. And really, like the realistic budget of what you're talking about before, $500,000-$600,000 is quite, or $500,000 to $700,000 is a real sweet spot at the moment. And you might need, say, $100,000 to sort of get into your first deal to kind of kick things off right now.
And so when you're thinking about first-time investors doing this, do you think we should be focusing on cash properties, those that are giving a decent yield, or is it all about growth in the initial stages? So
initial stages is always growth.
Yeah.
Unless you're a super low income earner and you can't afford something that's hugely negatively geared. Not that we ever want to play in the hugely negatively geared space. We always want to take cash flow into the equation, but when you're first starting out, you always want to focus on growth, because ultimately, if you've got $100,000 and that's all you've got, to put into a property, and let's say you keep a $10,000 buffer and you've got $100,000 to put into a deal, you need to replicate that as much as possible. So it's the same as we were talking about before. You buy a $500,000 property, and it goes up by 20% and gives you $100,000 back out. Let's say you borrow that at an 80 or 90% loan. You might be able to refinance 80 to 90 grand back out of it. There's another property.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were going for something else, I don't want something that costs me anything, so it's neutrally geared, but it's in Timbuktu and doesn't go up in value. Cool, it didn't cost you anything to own it, but how much did it actually cost you in growth?
Yeah.
There's something might have been 5-10 grand a year negative, it went up by 100,000. We're actually 90 to 95 grand in front of that cash flow asset. And so this is where people really need to understand, especially initially and building a portfolio, you need to focus on equity to continue to drive deposits, to continue to pick up assets, because the name of the game when you really want to build a portfolio is to build the asset base as big as possible, as quickly as possible, to allow it to have market exposure to really grow.
Yeah.
And then we can come back for cash flow further down the track.
And so then, just to kind of close it all out,
Yeah.
how does that strategy, where I'm just going to rent where I want to live,
Yep.
and go out and buy $400,000 or $500,000 property, and how does that then lead to me actually getting my dream home?
It kind of depends on what the definition of the dream home is. For some people it's 2 mil, some people it's 5, some people it's 15, right? But all the premise is always the same. You want to scale yourself an asset base large enough so that when that goes through X amount of growth, whether you build a 5 mil portfolio and it goes through 50% worth of growth, and you just netted 2.5 million, or 75% or 100% worth of growth, where we net somewhere between the 2.5, the 3.5, 5 million, whatever that is. If that's what your primary residence goal is, that's effectively how you can build it out and actually get there. So you build an asset base at X amount, it goes through, again, Y amount of growth, sell down, bank, and then buy it like that. Myself personally is I prefer to, and I like to build strategies for clients like this as well. I would prefer to build the asset base to build you a net passive income of a certain amount, whether it's 100, 150, 200, whatever the goal is. Start to build towards that. Come back for the primary residence down the track.
Yeah.
Because a $5 million primary residence probably rents for $2,000 a week. I know I just moved out of my rental and into the primary residence I just bought. The rental I lived in before was a $5 million primary residence, a $5 million home, and I was renting it for $2,000 a week.
Yeah.
So $100,000 a year versus owning that property with a $4 million worth of debt on it is probably about $300,000 a year, plus $1 million deposit plus stamp. So you're 1.5 mil in to buy it at 80% plus $4 million loan. So instead, I would prefer to build out an actual passive income that can pay for that rent while I then continue to build out more of an equity base and let that continue to grow. And then when the time's right to exit those markets, sell them down, use the big deposits to actually pay for maybe 50% deposit on the home, and then use the passive income that we've just now built, just now, we're talking a 5, 8, 10 year window to do this whole play, to then fund the rest and pay the rest of that loan potentially out.
Yeah, nice.
So it's always a strategy dependent on what you're really chasing. But for me, what I've realized is the really expensive primary residences are typically really cheap to rent in comparison. So you build the passive income out first. That's going to allow you to live in that style of asset sooner, when then after that point, you can build out the actual strategy to build the equity base to own that property and buy it properly.
And I think the key thing here is just to remember that like this strategy is one where if people are feeling like overwhelmed with getting their PPR, then as you said, you sit down with plenty of Equity Mates listeners and work through these strategies so that over time they will get to that goal. But at the same time, feel like they're not missing out on being in the market. I think that's the main thing.
It's very, very unlikely, you know, especially if you're in your 20s or your 30s, especially if you've never owned property before, it's very unlikely you're ever going to, like for now, you're going to be able to directly buy what your dream primary residence is. You have to leverage to that point, you know, and whether it's leveraging a portfolio, whatever it is, but normally you have to leverage a portfolio to be able to access something that's actually outside your price point. But the cool thing is, you know, again, we talk about that $5 million asset. If you go and buy that with a $3-4 million deposit and have a very small debt against it, it's very manageable and you can see the way that that thing can scale. You can't go and buy that directly. Or if you did, the mortgage would be so ridiculous. Like you need to earn, like we're talking a $300,000 mortgage on a property at $5 million with a $4 million loan. So you need a $1.5 million deposit for the plus stamps, plus paying that off. You need to be making like $600,000 a year, probably more. Probably $700,000 a year to be able to actually afford that equation.
It's ridiculous.
It's you know what I mean? It's not relatable.
It's not relatable.
This strategy is 100% possible.
Yeah, love it. Well, if you've just joined us for the first time, go back and listen to one of the first episodes we did with Sam, where we do break down rent vesting in more detail. And as I said at the start, Sam is working with plenty of Equity Mates listeners to help them in this space. I remember meeting a bunch of them at our live events that we've done with you, Sam, who have certainly, I mean, they've now got multi-property portfolios, which is awesome to see. Now, before we close, you are doing your Australian Property Scout Summit.
Yes,
it's back.
It's back.
Yes, it's back. Tickets are on sale.
They are.
It's happening in November.
It is.
November 15th at the Star in Brisbane. I think it was a sold-out event last year. And this year, tickets are on sale. I think over 2/3 have already sold out. So grab your tickets now. The APS Summit is your opportunity to hear directly from you, Sam. What are you going to cover?
Oh, man, there's so much we're actually covering on the day. So many different strategies in terms of building a large property portfolio. Pretty much everything. There's almost everything you want to see covered in an event, or almost like, let's say there was, you know, you had to listen to 10 podcasts back to back. You might have to listen to 100 to then drill down to the 10 that will actually give you value. The whole idea of this event, and it was the same as last year, is to give you actionable steps and takeaways and strategies that you can apply to your own portfolio, whether you've started or you've got nothing, or you're 3, 5, 10 properties in, whatever it is. It's to actually give you the strategies to be able to continue to either, whether it's start or grow the portfolio heading into 2026 as well. And man, I did live strategy sessions on the stage where people gave me their info and I wrote it all up, and then I told, I mapped out how I would build it from there. Man, heaps of different strategies. We did the live Q&A as well, where people from the audience could literally hit us with questions too. The really cool thing of all the, pretty much all the Equity Mates listeners that are part of APS community now as well. Almost all of them are in School of Property also, and so they actually get access to the boot camp that's on the Sunday as well. So that's closed doors for School of Property only, but that's going to be a beautiful thing that obviously is going to be there too. But the Australian Property Scout Summit, mate, there's that much that's going to be covered off in it. Absolutely action packed, and man, I'm really looking forward to doing it again.
Love it. Well, we'll put a link in the show notes for tickets. They're on sale now. That is November 15th at the Star in Brisbane. But Sam, always good to chat. We have a live event coming up with you here in Sydney and Melbourne as well. We're going to show people how you can build wealth in stocks and property. So tickets to that is also in the link below. But Sam, thank you so much.
Looking forward to it, mate. Bryce, thanks as always.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.